Since ancient times, the Moonstone diamond has been worshipped as a sacred treasure in Hindu temples, where monks were willing to sacrifice their lives to protect it. They believed the stone carried an ancient curse. Whoever stole it would bring disaster upon themselves and those around them. However, on a bloody night in 1799, during a massacre in India, a British officer, said to be enchanted by the stone's hypnotic glow, ruthlessly killed 3 monks and took it. From that moment, the Moonstone left the Holy Land, and the curse began to spread. Nearly half a century later, the mysterious diamond reappeared, this time as a birthday gift for an English noblewoman named Rachel Verinder. No one knew how it came into her possession, and no one expected that, after a night filled with candlelight and wine, the Moonstone vanished. No bloodstains, no signs of intrusion, no one left the mansion. But the eyes of those inside the house avoided each other. And from there, a series of strange events, buried secrets, and broken souls began to unfold layer by layer. Who took the stone? Why is Rachel silent? And does the ancient curse really come back for revenge? Welcome to the Moonstone, where the light of the diamond can lead to the darkest corners of the human soul. Before stepping into the mysterious mist surrounding the Moonstone diamond, we need to pause for a moment to mention the person who gave birth to an entire genre of novels. The Moonstone, or the Moonstone Diamond, is a work first published in 1868 by Wilkie Collins, an English writer. Not merely a thrilling novel, The Moonstone is also considered the first detective novel written in English, paving the way for later famous names such as Sherlock Holmes and Hercule Poirot. With a multi-perspective narrative style, complex plot, and deep character psychology, The Moonstone is not only a detective story, but also a journey into the mysteries of the human heart, where love, deceit, and hidden secrets determine the fate of an entire family. The story of the Moonstone diamond does not begin in England, but hundreds of years earlier, in the heart of India. At that time, within a sacred temple in the east, there existed a giant yellow diamond, revered as the eye of a god. It was believed that the stone would only bless those who kept it with purity and faith. But if stolen, it would bring bad omens, madness, and death. In 1799, during the siege of Seringapatam, a British officer named John Herncastle seized the stone from the temple, despite bloodshed and warnings. From that night, 3 Hindu priests who had vowed to protect the stone for generations began a silent pursuit. They hid in the shadows, persistently crossing oceans, quietly like a curse following the thief. Returning to England, Colonel Herncastle lived in wealth and darkness. People whispered about his violent temper, paranoid illness, and cold isolation. No one knew exactly what happened, but everyone believed the stone had begun to cast its curse. Before he died, Herncastle neither donated the stone to a museum nor destroyed it. He left the diamond in his will as an 18th birthday gift for his granddaughter Rachel Verinder, the daughter of his estranged sister. Could this be his final act of revenge? Lady Julia Verinder, a wise and dignified widow, received the gift with suspicion. She always distrusted her brother and felt the stone was an ill omen, unfit to be in her home. But bound by the will, she had to ensure the stone was delivered to Rachel. The night before the birthday, the diamond was sent to the Verinder estate in Yorkshire, an old mansion in the countryside. The stone appeared magnificent in a black velvet box, large, dazzling, its light flickering like fire under the lamp. Rachel saw it and was immediately enchanted. The birthday party the next day was splendid. Music, fresh flowers, laughter. Among the guests were Gabriel Betteridge, the loyal butler, who would become the first narrator. Franklin Blake, Lady Verinder's cousin, recently returned from abroad and the one who directly brought the stone, also closely connected to Rachel. Several suitors for Rachel, guests and figures lurking in the shadows. But by the next morning, the diamond had vanished. No signs of forced entry, no broken locks. Rachel, who had worn the stone the night before, suddenly became cold and strangely silent. Meanwhile, the locals began gossiping about 3 strange Indians who often appeared in the village, performing street magic and asking odd questions. They had never approached the mansion, but everyone sensed something was wrong. A breath of fate had begun to tighten around them all. The disappearance of the stone was not just a question of who the culprit was. but also a mystery of why it was taken and what would happen to those connected to it. From that moment, the fate of everyone in the house became intertwined with the stone, and the clock began to tick, leading us into one of the first and greatest detective novels ever written. And so the mystery of the Moonstone begins, with a birthday gift, a lost gem, and a house full of secrets. But to truly understand what happened, we must start with those who experienced it. The first to tell his story is Gabriel Betteridge, the longtime butler of the Verinder estate. Wise, loyal, and somewhat old-fashioned, Betteridge witnessed every strange turn from the very beginning. In his quiet way, he began piecing together the events of that unforgettable summer. And as we will see, the truth is much more complicated than anyone expected.
My name is Gabriel Betteridge. I have served the Verinder family for over 50 years, from boyhood to adulthood, and I can say without hesitation that nothing in my long career has disturbed the peace of our family, like the appearance and disappearance of the Moonstone. In June 1848, the fateful events began to unfold. Miss Rachel Verinder, just 18 years old, was about to receive her birthday gift, a diamond beyond imagination. At that time, none of us knew that this gift would ignite a mystery that would shatter lives and sow suspicion among friends and family alike. I am the house steward, responsible for the mansion, the servants, the gardens, and to some extent the order of everything under Lady Verinder's roof. And believe me, the moment that a cursed diamond entered the house, order began to unravel, and things were far from over.
How did Franklin Blake appear?
On the day before Miss Rachel's birthday, Mr. Franklin Blake arrived from London. He was the son of Lady Verinder's late sister, a well-educated young man with a European style and a restless nature that made him constantly move from one country to another. He brought the Moonstone, just as Colonel Herncastle's will had specified. The jewel was to be handed directly to Rachel on the evening of her 18th birthday, and Franklin had taken on that task. I like Mr. Franklin. He is polite, intelligent, and always speaks kindly to everyone, although he smokes a bit more than I prefer. I have a feeling about the affection he has for Rachel, and she for him. You don't work in a house as long as I have without noticing things that others don't say. However, when he opened the package containing the jewel and showed it to me privately, I admit, even I was surprised. The Moonstone was not only large, it had a very unique glow. It sparkled as if it had life. They say diamonds carry no emotion, but I swear this one seemed to be looking back at you.
How was the birthday party at Frisinghall House?
On Rachel's birthday morning, the house was radiant with flowers, music, and lively activity. The servants were busy, guests arrived, and Rachel, radiant in a white lace dress, glided through it all like the young queen of a magical kingdom. I could see the pride in Mrs. Verinder's eyes as she looked at her daughter. Usually quite reserved, she still smiled. We had some guests attending. Mr. Franklin, of course. Miss Clack, a devout churchgoer, somewhat intrusive, passionate about distributing religious leaflets. Godfrey Ablewhite, a famous philanthropist, handsome, devout, and if you ask me, a bit too polished. Ezra Jennings, the family doctor, and a few others from the town of Frisinghall. When the time came, Franklin handed the Moonstone to Rachel in front of everyone. She gasped. The gem sparkled more under the candlelight, and she immediately pinned it to the front of her dress, proud and enchanted. That night we celebrated and danced, but the joy did not last.
Gabriel Betteridge whispers and warning.
That night I walked around the school campus to clear my mind. That was when I noticed them. 3 Indian men, dressed as circus performers, performing magic near the village festival. I had seen many street performers before, but these men had a calmness, almost strange in the way they performed. Silent, alert. They disappeared before I could get close, but something deep inside me said they weren't here for kins or applause. Earlier that week, a street vendor had warned one of the servants about a cursed stone, and that those men would follow it across the sea. At first, I ignored it, thinking it was just superstition. But now, I'm not so sure anymore.
How did the next morning go?
The next morning, the whole house was in chaos. Miss Rachel's room door was locked. When she stepped out, she looked pale and confused. Her dress was simple. The diamond had disappeared. The servants were questioned. Every drawer was searched. There were no signs of a break-in, no locks broken, no windows open. Nothing at all. Miss Rachel gave no explanation. When Lady Verinder pressed her, she became cold and distant, as if something had changed in her overnight. I remember the chill spreading throughout the house. Suspicion quietly crept in and was now present in every corner. Mr. Franklin was shocked, perhaps more than anyone. He took the loss personally, and when Rachel also withdrew from him, refusing to speak, his confusion turned into silent despair. And so the storm broke. The Moonstone had vanished, and none of us could say for sure who took it or why, but I, Gabriel Betteridge, felt deep in my bones. This was no ordinary theft. This was the beginning of something dark, and something far from over.
When the dust of suspicion settled, at least temporarily, on the Verinder estate, new voices began to emerge from the shadows. What really happened that night? Who saw what? And who might be hiding the truth? Now the story shifts to new hands. Different perspectives, different motives, and perhaps new lies. Let's hear from Drusilla Clack, a distant relative with a sharp tongue, keen eyes, and a habit of observing more than she should. Welcome to part 2.
I must begin, as every faithful Christian must, with humility. I have no desire to be drawn into worldly matters, let alone a scandal involving theft and deceit. Yet divine providence often uses the smallest among us as instruments to reveal the truth. And so, I was invited to London by dear Mrs. Verinder, following the tragedy at her estate in Yorkshire. When I arrived, Mrs. Verinder was pale, her spirit clearly burdened by the loss of the Moonstone and the silence of her only daughter, Rachel. Though grieving, she still received me with her usual composure. But I, Drusilla Clack, could see the tension in her eyes. I knew I had to be her spiritual support. I visited daily without fail, bringing along bundles of pamphlets, Satan in High Society, Hell Expanded for the Upper Class, and my favorite, Whispers to the Young Woman in Silk. Sadly, she showed no interest in them. In fact, one afternoon, I returned to find all 12 of my pamphlets thrown into the fire. Such blasphemy! But I forgave her, for she was ill and clearly not herself. It was during this time that he returned. Franklin Blake, handsome, confident, and dangerous, if you ask me. A man who believes reason can solve every mystery, even those buried deep within the soul. His arrival stirred the whole family. He came not only to resolve the Moonstone affair, but also to mend something broken with Rachel. Mrs. Verinder initially received him coldly. I eavesdropped, of course, only to protect the family's integrity. Their conversation was quiet but tense. "She blames me," Mr. Blake said. "Then you must make her understand," Mrs. Verinder replied. "She refuses to see me. Then let her endure her pride in silence." Such bitterness. It shocked me, but nothing shocked me more than what happened next. One afternoon, the doorbell rang and Godfrey Ablewhite entered, the most generous bachelor in London, a pillar of the Protestant movement, and a regular contributor to the Women's Committee for Helping Poor Tailors. He bore a gentle smile and carried a bouquet of lilies. Oh, the holy aura he radiated. That evening I happened upon them in the drawing room. He knelt. Miss Rachel stood stiff and silent. "I offer you my name, my protection," he said, "and a heart devoted to God and to you." Rachel said nothing. Then, in a voice colder than marble, she replied, "I agree." I gasped. Surely she was delirious. Godfrey looked as stunned as I did. but he took her hand, kissed it, and gave thanks. To this day, I believe she did it not out of love, but pride. Pride to hurt Mr. Blake. And oh, he must have been heartbroken. While this courtship unfolded, Mrs. Verinder grew weaker. Her body wasted away, though her spirit still fought. One evening, as I read from the mark of the red miner by her bedside, she turned to me and whispered, "Drusilla, if I go, take care of Rachel." Her hand trembled. I felt the sacred responsibility, but beneath those words, was there guilt, fear, or understanding? I could not say. But I knew this. She was dying. A few days later, she passed away peacefully in her sleep. Rachel did not attend the funeral. No letter, no telegram, only silence. Can you imagine a daughter turning her back on her mother's deathbed? Even in grief, a young lady has duties to God and family. The scandal was unbearable. After the burial, Franklin asked to see me. He looked weary, as if weighed down by something invisible. We walked through Hyde Park. At first, he spoke little. "Miss Clack," he finally said, "Mrs. Verinder is hiding something." "Something we all hide," I replied. "Our sins. Only some sins shine brighter than others." He stared straight ahead. "Rachel won't talk to me," he muttered. "She thinks I stole the diamond." I said nothing. In my heart, I wondered if he was truly innocent. And so, my notes end here. I do not know what will happen to this cursed stone or the souls it has corrupted. But remember my words, no one plays with sin without being hurt.
I am Franklin Blake, and to begin my story, I must admit something unpleasant. I returned to England with two purposes: to unravel the mystery of the Moonstone diamond, and to win back Rachel Verinder's heart. She no longer spoke to me. No explanation. Not a single letter. The last time I saw Rachel was after that fateful party, and the next day, the diamond disappeared. From that moment on, Rachel looked at me with eyes I cannot forget. Suspicious, disappointed, cold. I cannot live without knowing the truth. I do not believe I lost her because of a crime I did not commit. And more than that, I need to know. Who took the diamond? I began to trace every clue. I went to Yorkshire and met again with Mr. Betteridge, the loyal steward of the Verinder household. He still firmly believed Rachel was innocent, but could not understand why she refused to cooperate. I returned to Lady Verinder's home to verify one last thing. On that night, the fateful night when I unconsciously stole the diamond, did anyone discover my actions? Not long after, I sought out Rosanna Spearman, the maid with a criminal past who once harbored secret feelings for me. She is dead now, but before that, she left an important clue. In despair and unrequited love, Rosanna tried to cover up my actions. She was the one who hid the paint-stained nightgown, the only evidence showing I left the room that night. She told no one, not out of complicity, but because of the weak heart of a one-sided lover. I began to doubt myself. Then I turned to Dr. Ezra Jennings, an eccentric man whom few trusted but who possessed medical knowledge ahead of his time. When I told him about my lost memory of that night, he did not doubt me. He proposed a hypothesis. Perhaps I was drugged, either accidentally or deliberately. We decided to do something bold, reenact that very night. I would stay with Jennings, drink the same medicine, and see what would happen. We prepared for the reenactment night as if staging a play, with my soul as the actor unaware of its role. The room was exactly as it had been that night. The table, the lamp, the armchair where I sat reading, even the wooden chest holding the jewelry, where the diamond had been placed before it disappeared. Dr. Jennings prepared the medicine, the exact dose I had taken that night. I agreed, though filled with fear. This was the only way to learn the truth, and if I was the one who stole the diamond, I had to face it. As the drug took effect, I felt my body lighten, my mind drawn into a fog. I could still hear voices around me, still see the oil lamp's light reflecting on the wooden walls, but everything became distant, distorted. I was no longer myself. I stood up, without a word. I walked to the table, as if controlled by an invisible hand. I opened the chest and took the diamond. My eyes were wide open, but there was no greed, only cold emptiness. I left the room. Everyone followed me silently, through the hallway, down the stairs. I remember nothing, but my feet took me to the right place. I was at Franklin Blake's door. I unlocked it and went inside. I carefully hid the stone in a small leather box, as if I already knew what to do. Then I lay down on the bed, calm, as if I had never left. That scene chilled everyone present. I, a sane, honest man, with no reason to steal, was the one who took the diamond, and I did not even know I had done it. The drug had manipulated my consciousness. But who led me to that action? Who took advantage of me? That question remains unanswered. But at least now I know. Rachel was right. I took the stone, and I betrayed her, not by will, but by an unconscious hand, guided by someone in the darkness. When I went to Rachel, bearing the truth, I did not expect forgiveness. I only hoped she would know. I did not betray her. I was merely a victim of something I have never understood until now. And when Rachel looked at me, her eyes were no longer cold. I had regained both my memory and her heart.
I am Ezra Jennings. I do not belong to this world, or at least this world has never truly welcomed me. An eccentric, living in seclusion without a secret about an illness no one understands and a past few believe. But fate brought me to Yorkshire to work as an assistant to Dr. Candy. And then, on a fateful night, I met Franklin Blake. I knew he remembered nothing about the night the Moonstone diamond disappeared, but when he recounted everything, something inside me awakened. Not just compassion, but a quiet call for justice. A justice that neither he nor I had been fully granted. I suspected, had Franklin been poisoned with a drug? I remember clearly that day Dr. Candy was ill, and in a playful attempt to tease him, I gave Franklin a dose of a sleeping potion I prepared. No ill intent, just a bit of opium so he could rest peacefully. No one knew this, but now I must make things right, and the only way is to reenact that night, exactly in every detail, every dosage, every vague feeling between reality and illusion. Franklin agreed, though there was still much worry in his eyes. We prepared everything as if staging a play: the armchair, the oil lamp, the wooden chest. I watched him sit down, take the drug, then gradually slip into the state between wakefulness and sleep. As the drug took effect, I saw him change. Franklin stood up, completely unaware of what he was doing. His eyes were empty, his face expressionless. He walked to the chest, opened it, took the diamond, exactly as it had happened. Everyone in the room held their breath. I followed him as he walked down the hallway, went downstairs, turned into a private room, and hid the stone in a leather box. Then he lay down on the bed as if he had never left. I felt a chill run down my spine, not because of the act itself, but because of one truth. Franklin was innocent. He was merely a victim of a mistake I had caused. I wrote the entire event in my journal, partly to preserve the truth, partly because I knew I did not have much time left. The illness was consuming me day by day, but if I could help those two, Franklin and Rachel, and find each other again, then my life would no longer be meaningless. The next day, I met Rachel again. I told her everything. About the drug, about the reenactment, about Franklin. Tears fell down her cheeks as the truth was revealed, not out of anger, but because years of misunderstanding had caused her pain. When Franklin entered the room, they looked at each other. No more distance, no more doubt. Just two people who once loved each other, and now could love again from where it had broken. I stood silently outside, listening to the soft laughter and voices through the slightly closed door. No one called my name, nor was it necessary. I had done my part, and in that moment, I felt peace.
I am Mr. Bruff, the longtime lawyer of the Verinder family. When Franklin Blake came to me to trace the trail of the Moonstone diamond, I knew this case was not simply a theft in the shadows. There was something more sinister, and I was determined to help him uncover the truth. We began by investigating the financial information related to Godfrey Ablewhite, a man once regarded as the epitome of a gentleman and also the jilted fiancé of Miss Rachel. But what we discovered shocked me. Godfrey was actually drowning in debt, living off a false reputation. He used a philanthropic facade to cover personal loans and a lavish lifestyle. More seriously, he had direct connections to a private bank in India, where the diamond might have been pawned. I traced the transactions and found an anonymous parcel sent from England to London, received by someone using a false name, but linked to Ablewhite's rented address. The pieces connected. We had enough evidence to suspect that Godfrey was the one who took the diamond from Franklin. When Franklin unknowingly carried it away during the night, he was hypnotized. When confronted, he denied everything, but the truth did not wait for his acceptance. Shortly after, Godfrey was found dead, murdered in a small inn. And inside his coat they found a pouch containing the last trace of the Moonstone. Though he could not be brought to justice, Godfrey's death marked the end of a chain of deceit and betrayal. And more importantly, the truth was finally.
After losing track of the diamond for the second time, the final clue lay in the iron box once deposited at the bank by a mysterious man named Mr. Luker. Franklin Blake, with the support of lawyer Mr. Bruff, secretly arranged for the box to be watched. The coachman who transported the box that day was the first witness. He recounted that he had driven Mr. Godfrey Ablewhite, disguised completely, from the bank to a secret apartment in the city. No one recognized Godfrey because his usual elegant appearance had been replaced by a gray cloak and dark glasses. This made the coachman suspicious only after reading the sensational news the next day. A few days later, the mortuary manager was called to identify the body of an unknown man murdered in the apartment. The body was later confirmed to be Godfrey Ablewhite, stabbed with a dagger in a ritualistic manner. Strangely, there were no signs of a search, only a small box lying beside the victim's body. The box was empty. The police initially suspected a murder for money, but the intervention of Mr. Murthwaite, a traveler who had lived many years in India, clarified the matter. He declared that this was the act of 3 Indian monks. They had been tracking the trail of the Moonstone for many years to return it to the temple, according to their beliefs. Godfrey, the man who borrowed the stone from Franklin while he was hypnotized, had kept it as his own property to hide a huge debt. He disguised himself with a facade of morality and false charity, but it was this greed that led to his death. Finally, thanks to witness testimonies and Mr. Luker's confession, the police were forced to close the case. The diamond had been secretly returned to India. Mr. Murthwaite, the only one who followed this journey, later sent a letter from India stating, "The Moonstone had been placed back on the forehead of the deity statue, under the full moonlight, where it belongs." When the Moonstone diamond was returned to India, nothing stood between Franklin Blake and Rachel Verinder. The misunderstandings that once separated them, suspicion, hurt, silence, were all resolved through Franklin's relentless efforts and Rachel's deep trust. She knew now that he was not only the man she once loved, but also someone who dared to face the truth and overcome fear to reclaim both honor and love. They held a simple wedding in Yorkshire, in the garden that had marked their childhood, and was also where they parted ways after the night the diamond disappeared. All the characters connected to this journey were present. Gabriel Betteridge with his familiar pipe, Miss Clack a bit too emotional, Mr. Bruff quietly proud, and even Ezra Jennings, the stranger who had become family. No one spoke much about Godfrey Ablewhite's death. Justice had been served. Each person, whether good or evil, had chosen their own path. Mr. Murthwaite's letter from India was the final chapter of the story. In it, he described the sacred scene when the Moonstone was placed back in the ancient temple under the bright moonlight. 3 monks knelt, praying in silence. There was no victory, no hatred, only a return, like a curse closing the cycle. Franklin and Rachel left all darkness behind, starting a new life together. Around Rachel's neck, there was no jewelry. She no longer needed it, because the brightest light was the faith restored in their hearts.